just being open with each other about it and talking through our feelings has brought us closer together. So that's kind of our swinger thing.
So say there was people listening to this, because I'm sure there will be, that have thought about it. They think that it's something that they would like to do. What advice would you give them as far as speaking with their significant other?
I think communicating, just saying openly, I met this guy, we've been talking, how does that make you feel? And just kind of talk about your emotions and how it's not.
Warning, may contain sexual content, ADHD, consensual sex, scruffy dude faces, attempted orgies, and/or peanuts. Ian Woodstock.
So I've been super excited to sit down with both of you for quite some time. We've been friends for how long? I'm not even sure.
6 months at least.
At least. In fact, I think I came to know y'all at someone's wedding reception. I think it was Chuck and Ashley's.
Yeah, Houston.
And someone came up to me and they said, "Hey, have you met Bob yet?" And I said, "No." "You haven't met him? He's a swinger." And that's how I was introduced to you. And so I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
But it was John. But but I'll tell you afterwards.
Checks out.
And so I was just like, oh, okay. Like I came from a incredibly conservative background. I was raised Mormon, as most listeners know. But what I've been loving doing on this show specifically, but also in my life over the last, as much as I can, I like seeking out things that I used to have a stigma against and explore those. And I found every single time, with very few exceptions, that I'm like all on board with most stuff. Like I met with the guy that does cyborg installations in his body, and I'm like, that's fucking weird. But then he started describing the different things that he put in his body and the benefits of it, and I'm like, I actually might do that someday, and surprised myself. So in the swinger realm, I was like, well, that's a perfect episode, because I can just sit here and ask you honest questions. And the fact that you guys are so awesome and open about it, I think is a tribute to the idea that it is maybe an unfair stigma towards it. I think people maybe fear what could come of it. And so being able to get both of you on at the same time is amazing, to be able to answer some questions of my nosy self. Because even though we've been friends for a while, I haven't really asked you a lot about it. We've never really talked in detail about it. And I know for a fact, a bunch of our friends probably want to know details. So today's the day. So first off, give us a little intro of how long have you guys known each other? Where'd y'all meet?
Yeah.
You can go.
This might take a second to get warmed up.
All good. You can get some more beer in you too.
Yeah, exactly. Before, I just recently learned that I have ADHD.
Okay.
And so now everything has been explained, at why like listening to people talk for a while is so difficult, or why like concentrating on one subject and just getting the whole, maybe that's why our last podcast episode was the way it was, is because we just like went fluttering all over the place. So I'm going to do my best to stay on subject here.
I actually have been told recently by not a doctor, so there's a chance that there's zero truth. But
was it me that told you?
No, it was my brother seems to think that I have ADHD, and Facebook seems to think that I have ADHD because every other ad that comes up says treat your ADHD with XYZ, right?
Yeah.
I think the algorithm probably knows me better than myself at this point, so I think it's safe to say that I don't know if it's a spectrum. I haven't done zero research into ADHD. How did you determine that you had it?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a spectrum. I haven't also been diagnosed by a doctor, but I've started seeing memes that were talking about ADHD, and I was like, wow, that's ADHD. I thought that was just how people are normally. And then I started looking at more and more and more of them, and I realized, oh shit, this is for sure the hyperfixation thing. This explains everything.
Well, sounds like you have been diagnosed by Facebook as well,
Yeah, exactly.
or Instagram, or whichever drugs you use.
Yeah.
Do you guys use TikTok?
No.
I have a TikTok and I started it, but I found that it was bad for ADHD because there's different types from what I basically. Sorry, we have a cat.
We have a cat
We
here.
should probably cut this whole. If anybody's listening to this whole beginning part will hopefully be cut. But if not, thank you. It's gonna get better. The beginning of this, it's rough, but it's gonna get better.
So we have a cat, for the people who are not watching the video, that when I was in Germany, I was telling them off the mic that for some reason cats are attracted to my gear bag. I have this hiking bag that with all the cords and stuff, and there must be something in it. It's just so excited about it.
Should I put him outside?
If you need to put it outside for focus, I've got to the point where with kids and other podcasts that I just zone out. I just tunnel in. So if there's something that's distracting you 100%, we can make some changes.
He's just going to want to come back in later.
Yeah.
So we'll just...
Yeah, that's another interesting thing too, is us not having kids. Is I notice, like, with the kids around, how do you get anything done when there's kids around? It is so incredibly distracting.
You don't. I think that's the only reason why we still have office buildings, is because of children.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would all just be remote work. What I'd like to hear from y'all is, well, let's go back to swinging.
Yeah, back to the original question.
Well, do you guys like to talk about it? Is that something that you openly talk about, or is it awkward to you?
No, we're pretty open talking to people about it if they ask questions. We don't openly tell people, but
Sometimes we do.
sometimes we do if we're trying to make something happen. But
If you're looking
Pick
for,
somebody up.
I guess, do you go out and actively seek like single people or couples? Is it just swapping, or is it
No,
like group
it's-
play? There's a lot of definitions that we could probably throw out, but we could set a little definitions of our own here. So what is swinging, first off, to y'all?
Yeah, for me, I almost wouldn't even consider us swingers. It's funny that in our friend group, the spectrum from full monogamy to more swinging, it's not that big of a difference between being monogamous. I think there's a guy in Seattle, I can't remember his name, Dan something, but they call it monogamish. And
Okay.
I feel like we would be considered maybe more monogamish than just full-blown swingers, because when I think of swinging, I think of Florida man and wife, middle-aged, 50s, white goatee, he's got a boat, kind of looks like Guy Fieri.
That's very specific.
And
You had an experience in Florida.
no.
no, but that's more what I picture. And they solicit other couples or other groups of couples, and they do the full-on, hey, this is my wife, this is the full switch, get drunk at the bar. I just picture it a lot different than more of what we would consider ourselves, which is like 95% of the time we're monogamous, but we try to work on the jealousy thing, or we try to.
We have the option if the situation presented to itself to experiment with other people. So if I'm out at a bar and a guy is hitting on me and I'm feeling it, then I have that option to explore that. And we just talk about it. I'll let him know and we talk through it and just kind of work on it that way. So that way I feel good going out, or if he meets someone and wants to explore the feelings that way, like we have our options too, and we don't have to feel bad about cheating on each other or making the other person jealous. I mean, jealousy is going to happen regardless, but just being open with each other about it and talking through our feelings has brought us together, closer together. So that's kind of our swinger thing. And then we've done couple swinging too. We met a couple on Reddit that we went on a date with and explored that. It was kind of fun going on a date with another couple, because then we can leave the date and talk about it. And it's kind of fun to have that experience with someone. I don't know.
Yeah.
Instead of just going on a date single and then talking it with your best friend, they weren't there, so they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But my best friend was there, so I can talk to about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right after, as soon as you get in the car, you can just like talk about all of the things.
And that comes off so wholesome. But when you talk to, say, my parents, they'd be like, it would be out the realm. They couldn't have a, wait, what's that noise?
That's the cat. That's the automatic cat feeder going off. That will hopefully only go off once.
That sounds like it's so close because it was right next to us.
And now you're going to hear him eating. So sorry, guys.
We should probably,
No, this is perfect. This is
Adrian, we're going to need you to cut a lot out of this.
Leave it all in. Leave it all
Okay.
in. Well, so my interest in it stemmed from y'all. Like I'd never really been introduced to anyone who openly talked about it until you two. And so when I started this podcast, Bob, you were on the show actually, and we had talked off the microphone about doing one with Kat because I think it's most people, or at least I'm not going to say most people, what I thought would happen typically in a swinger relationship was the guy being, yeah, that's fuck some bitches, and the girl being like, I don't really want to, but I'm going to put up with it. And I think it's really important having the both sides, the female, male, or, you know, if you're male, female, female, the world we live in these days, but both sides of the party being a part of it. And so when we talked about potentially doing an episode about it, I kind of decided I needed to do a little research on it. So I went to Reddit. There's a subreddit, just swingers, and it's just text. The whole thing's just text, no pictures, and it's just people talking out their emotions, people talking about the different ways to approach it. And what came off to me was similar to what I said. It came off freaking wholesome. Like these couples who had been growing apart decided to experiment in this new way, and it allowed them to talk about things and emotions and themselves in a way that they were never able to before, and they ended up getting closer than they ever were instead of the opposite, which is what, you know, I think the standard person would think. If you're swinging, it's because you're looking for other options, and it didn't come off that way from all the, you know, dozens of people that were posting and talking about it. So do you remember the first conversation you guys had about it where you were like, hey, should we test these waters out?
Yeah, well, I think it started even before the testing of the waters things. When we first started dating, to answer your first question that you asked 14 minutes ago about the beginning of our relationship and when we started dating, we didn't really think that we were going to date. Like we're
happy hooking up with each other and seeing other people at the same time.
Yeah, it was like a really casual thing. It wasn't one of those, I saw her for the first time and I knew that she was going to be the one and I had to lock it down and put a ring on it. And when I say that, it sounds really bad, but
that seems like that's just the type of people you are. You seem pretty happy single at the time, right?
Yeah. And I think that's important for our relationship, is that like we could be happy single, and that I think that maybe some people get like they really, really fall in love when they first meet their significant other and they're like the one and they need to protect them above all things. And then that leads to this jealousy aspect when he or she has a high school friend reach out to them that's like, hey, I haven't seen you in 20 years. What's going on? And like those little conversations can start to turn into cheating. And I think that a lot of that stuff just comes from the media that's around us. Like not even really the media, but what you see from early on growing up, like even in Disney movies, like
there's a very rigid way that society has worked, at least in the West, for thousands of years. And although we've had religions that have, say, like polygamy, like my roots. My grandma was born in a polygamist colony in Mexico. Very different, way less, I guess, what's the word I'm trying to get here? With what I've seen from the swinger lifestyle is the main key is honesty and being open with your partner, where some other, sexual lifestyles, whether it be polygamy and these different colonies that are still out there, it's not necessarily that. It's more of a control thing on the guy's side. But then again, I've never even spoken to actual polygamists, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's one of the stigmas that we have, and it's a totally fine way to live as well. But
I've heard even in, say, Japan and in certain Japanese culture, it's okay to, well, and I don't know if this works both ways, but it's maybe okay for the husband to cheat on the wife as long as he doesn't love the other woman, as long as it's just a sexual thing and there's no love there, and they just have sex and he comes home to her and they don't talk about it.
Well, if they're not talking about it, that kind of seems a little shady there.
Yeah, I think they just don't want to know. It's like, don't ask, don't tell.
It's more like the 1950s American model.
Yeah.
Guy just gets his way and lady stays at home and deals with it.
Yeah, and that's what makes for a happy marriage is. And so I don't know, I think that maybe we have realized what makes for a happy relationship with us is to be able to have that freedom. And the thing is a lot of people might think, oh, if you have this freedom, they're just going to use it all the time. And we just haven't found that to be the case at all, because it takes a lot of energy to be a swinger. It takes a lot of energy to get, if you think it's hard for two people to get together and hook up, now 4 people all have to line up at the same time in the same place. And so for me, at least, it takes a ton of energy to do that. And so it's just a lot easier to spend 95% of the time monogamous in a relationship. And then when you're like, all right, well, let's go do something fun. But instead of going on a vacation to Mexico, maybe it's all right, let's just go see what else is going on out there. Or let's pursue this option.
So is it almost like you go for a while and you're like, well, I think it's time. Let's maybe go to a bar and search for someone, or is it just kind of let it happen? If it's organic and you get some feelings, you just know that you're able to act on it versus actually actively looking for it. What's the typical?
Mostly organic. Besides the Reddit couple, I don't know. We're working on that right now. We're trying to figure out the best way to meet other couples, because Bob isn't. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to use his name or not.
No, you can.
Okay.
You can
It's not
use my name.
Bob's not really into that bar scene with loud music, so trying to find something and somewhere that would work for both of us to meet a couple.
Are there? I think there's swinger clubs in Austin, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys tried those out?
No, not yet.
No, I've read about it on Reddit, and some people suggest it, some people don't. It really just depends on what your scene is. I don't think it would hurt anything to go, because again, it's all based on consent. That's a big thing that we really believe in, is consent about everything. And that's one thing that I've learned about more of the modern day swinging thing, is that you have to talk about stuff. You have to be very open ahead of time and while things are going on, and you have to talk about it.
Lots of talking.
There's lots of talking. It's really not how most people would picture it, at least for us. And again, we're probably honestly not the swingers to talk to, because we're in a pretty special situation with me not drinking, and not only not drinking, but also being really sensitive to sound, light, smell, and having peaks of energy and then no energy, and having migraines. And so it's a logistical nightmare, honestly, for us to be swingers.
Understood.
It's true.
Compared to, say, like a healthy couple, both people are healthy, both like to grab a few drinks, and you just go out to the bar and there's another couple there and they're like, hey, can I buy you a drink? They're both drinking, and then after a few drinks, it's very easy to be like, well, do you want to come back to our place to play Parcheesi?
Is it that easy?
I think that it would be that easy. It was that easy when I used to drink.
Well, maybe you should start drinking again.
All right, pass me that beer.
So, why don't you drink? This isn't what we're talking about, but I've never really asked you before. I know that maybe you just have maybe you did tell me once. Maybe this is the part that we cut out, but
Maybe. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is
Ehlers. No, you definitely never told me that.
It's basically a hypermobility disorder, and so my joints. It's a collagen / connective tissue based disorder where I'm like double jointed in a lot of joints, but that's just scratching the surface of it. I'm double jointed.
That should help in bed, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
It definitely does. I think.
Cat's face.
But there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with it, like ADHD and sensory things, because the connective tissues in the ears aren't working properly, so sounds come up really, really loud, even if they're not that loud.
Is that something you were born with?
Yeah.
Okay. How
Yeah.
old were you when you figured it out?
I was probably 25. And then that explained a lot of things. The same with the ADHD, that explained a lot of things going backwards, where it was like, oh, well, that explains all of that. Okay.
I just thought you didn't use drugs because you got to have sex with a bunch of people and that was good enough for you.
No. And I have used drugs in the past, too. That's the thing. I've used drugs. I'm not against using drugs. And I just heard on a podcast the other day about ayahuasca, and this made a lot of sense to me because I've used psychedelics. I've used LSD and MDMA and smoked my fair share of weed. I actually had a medical marijuana card for a long time for the Ehlers-Danlos, which it was like migraines and joint pain and just all of these other pains.
Did it help?
It did, but it came with the side effects
Like
of
paranoia and stuff like that?
paranoia. Yeah, panic attacks, full-blown existential crisis.
Same with psychedelics, like shrooms, LSD.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
that can definitely get you in your head.
Yeah. And I think anxiety is common with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's all connected with the ADHD and the migraines and all of those things. But to circle back around, I don't drink because I basically go from being sober to being like pretty drunk to being really hungover for like 3 days.
Ooh,
Yeah.
not worth it.
It's not worth it at all. And then with the drugs, I think I'm not going to remember it now, but there was a really good saying for the drugs as far as like I used them, I got the message and I hung up. Like I didn't have to keep calling.
You learned what you needed to from the drugs and went
Yeah.
your merry way.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the smart way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Kat? You like doing drugs?
Yeah.
At this point, this is gonna be probably not for our parents, so we might as well just let loose. So
Yeah, I've already gone through. The very beginning of the show, I was very kind of patty cake, trying not to talk too much about it. But by this point, my family's just gotta, they still love me. That's all I care about.
Yeah, I'm okay with my family.
I
hearing
wasn't
about
going to tell my
this
family.
because.
Your family doesn't follow him on Instagram?
Oh, they do, so don't post it.
All right.
Uh-oh.
I won't post it. I really liked the last episode with Matt, though. I wanted to say that at some point during this episode, is that one was really good. And I shared it on my Instagram story because I was like, if there was only some way where I could just talk everybody that I know into listening to it,
Well, you keep trying for me.
You can't, because the more you try to like tell somebody to do something, the less they want to do it. So you can't be like, you have to listen to this.
No, the thing I love about this show is I'm truly doing an organic growth, and that's not the way to do it. Like if you actually do some research into podcasting and how to grow your show, that's the last thing you should try for. But I decided that's the only way that I'd be happy to do it. But the benefit of that is these earlier episodes, we can just literally talk about what excites us, what's fun for us, and get it out there instead of focusing on, all right, what's going to get a click, and the joy of it is consistently growing. I do consistently have people that reach out and say, hey, like this one really did hit me in a specific way. And so that makes me want to push it out there and get it out there more, but that'll just come with time. But it also, because I have people like you on, like you said earlier, you're not the experts in swingers, but that's the type of people I want on. I don't want someone that claims they're an expert in something, because half the time they're going to say it with so much confidence, everyone's going to believe them, but it's still just their perspective.
Yeah.
And you guys are the expert in your experiences of swinging and how it works for you. And I get off on that. I love hearing the normal Joes around here, because you got, say, like Joe Rogan, he's the pinnacle of podcasting. He's so disconnected from what a normal life is by this time that you can obviously tell. It's really fun to listen to the people he has on. Rogan does a fantastic job of guiding the conversation, but he has no idea what it's like to be middle class, or lower middle class, which is the new norm.
Where
but
we're at.
so I've been really, really enjoying having folks like you that may feel like, oh, what are we going to talk about? Or maybe we're talking too slow or too soft. But that's the thing that I think we need more of. That's reality, right?
Yeah, this can be in the series, and then when it takes off and goes big, then we can cut these ones out.
Nope, same forever.
Perfect.
Anyways, do you have any other, what do you have for questions that we can try to answer?
Well,
honestly?
if Grandma's not going to listen to us, then let's get deep into it.
My grandma is.
Do you guys enjoy, is it like same room stuff? Do you prefer a separate room? Do you guys like watching each other? I know the research that I've done, there's a lot of different ways to live what they call the lifestyle. And there's hot wives, there's bulls, there's full swaps, soft swaps, parallel play. It's fascinating, all the different tools that we have in our toolbox that most of us aren't using. What's the type of stuff that y'all look for and enjoy the most?
That's a good question. We've done kind of all of those things you said: separate rooms, same room, watching. I don't know if there's one in particular that I prefer over the others. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one that I prefer. It is kind of nice that it's different every time. And for the record, I mean, it really hasn't been that many times. It's not like, to put a number to it, maybe it's 5 to 7 times in like 5 or 6 years. It's not like
It's like once or twice a year.
Yeah, it's like once or twice a year. For our own personal brand of swinging or monogamish, it's been really organic. Like hardly ever is it actually planned ahead of time.
It's mostly with friends too.
Yeah, usually we know the people ahead of time.
Like you've known them for
relationship.
quite some time, and they want to experience what it's like.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start talking to Treya. We'll see what we can work out.
That's
how it starts.
That's exactly how it starts.
You just get drunk and you just start expressing what we do, and then
Somebody has to get drunk in the situation normally.
usually there's drinks involved.
Normally there's
For me.
drinks involved, and then it kind of gets like lightened up. And my personal thing is I enjoy either watching or hearing and just like letting Kat do her thing, because I think to go along with maybe the ADHD is I can get exhausted really easy, so I'm happy to have somebody else like
Take the reins.
Yeah. We've had devil's threesomes. We've had threesomes with 2 girls. And for me, I think that I even prefer 2 guys to having 2 girls, because then it takes the pressure off me.
Interesting. What about you?
I like the 2 guys.
2 guys, just more attention,
Yeah, I don't know why.
pillow princess style.
Kind of, sure. I don't know, there is one unicorn that we have that I really like. She's great, and I've had a lot of good threesomes with her
Yeah.
throughout our relationships. And then her and Bob kind of have their own relationship on their own.
Yeah, and that's another thing that can happen is it can be like I'm traveling, I see this other person, we have our own relationship separately, and I just tell Kat ahead of time, like, hey, there's a chance that this is probably going to happen. She says, okay, and then when I get back, whatever sort of details she wants.
It wasn't easy in the beginning.
Yeah.
It definitely has taken a lot of trust and communication and expressing feelings to get to the point where we're at. It's not like we just met each other and it's been like this for 6 years now. There's definitely a lot of talking and trust that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
I noticed the difference in the levels.
Well, now you're slow.
Kind of. Yeah, I messed up. I should have brought a third mic, and I was already on the road about an hour and a half in. Also, the pictures we were going to take, we were going to try to recreate a family photo, and Bob is a fantastic photographer, so we're going to have him shoot it up for it. Say again? Mediocre at best. Whatever. I got some proof up here. Your AI artwork is fantastic as well, which I wouldn't mind talking about that a little bit. But yeah, so I'm not great at my job yet still, but I think getting that mic a little bit closer to her.
Theory of evolution and fun fact, did you know that humans are more closely related to bonobos and chimps than the red fox is to the gray fox? And
Really?
than the African elephant is to the Asian or Indian elephant.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Mind-boggling.
Boring.
What is it?
I've heard it so many
Bonobos
times now.
are the only species that have multiple sex positions other than humans. Is that true?
That may be true. I may have read something about that. But I kind of have this interesting theory that maybe there's, I mean, obviously this isn't true. Scientists would prove this wrong instantly. But in my own Facebook post mind, I wonder if some of the genetics come from like bonobos or bonobo ancestors and some come from chimps, because chimps are known for being way more fighty and having more testosterone and having jealousy and killing. And bonobos are just known for like orgies and love. So I wonder if I evolved from a bonobo and your standard American monogamish.
Yeah, I'm an ape.
Came,
bonobo.
Came from the ape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm trying to be more bonobo.
It's not a bad life. For as many problems as it solves, it creates as many logistical problems, but I think that it's really worth it.
How often do you feel jealousy still?
0 times. For me personally, 0 times in the last, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years.
Same for you?
Yeah, about same. Like I said in the beginning, it was a lot more to work through with the jealousy, but...
And what do you think changed from the jealousy years to now?
Lots of communication about it. And I bought a book about jealousy and kind of just read through it, and being able to express the emotion and accept it and not kind of bottle up about it and hide away and not talk about things, because that just makes it worse.
Do you guys have a feeling of ownership over each other? Because I feel like a lot of relationships, one partner feels that they own that person, and that's what is never going to allow them to live a lifestyle like y'all. That's a terrible question.
No, it's a great question.
I know what you mean. No.
It's honestly a great question, and I think that that's a part of this for us, is that we don't feel ownership over each other. And because like sometimes I'll say something, or like maybe sometimes I'll be like, oh hey, if you wanna like hook up with Kat, do it, but it's totally her choice. Because I don't, like, how can I speak for her? I'm not able to say, like, you can do this. It's like, that's between the two of you. And so, say with the swinging thing, I can only say, like, hey, it's okay with me, as far as I know. Because you never really know until you're in the moment, too. That's the thing, is you in your mind might be like, I am totally okay with this person hooking up with that person. And jealousy can creep up on you, where you're like, wow, I Didn't realize that that was going to make me jealous, but it does.
Like you might be jealous or not jealous with certain people, but someone walks in and for some reason there's something with that person. And so Kat, if Bob said to you, you know, this one, no, would you respect that?
Of course. He's my number one, and if he's not okay with it, I don't want to jeopardize our relationship for someone else, especially if it's just like a one night stand, or if it's just like a good friend that he's just like, no, I respect it. So if he says no, then I move on.
And in the beginning years when there was jealousy involved, was there any part of that was because you might think that they would find something better and move on?
Yeah, I think because it was in the beginning of the relationship, it was uncertain where we were going. And I've never done anything like this before or have thought about it. So since day one, it was always open relationship. There was never any talk about closing it off, being exclusive. It was always open. So that just kind of made me insecure as I grew to love him a little bit more and not knowing what would happen. So being able to talk through that with him and building that trust throughout the years have made that jealousy go down.
Was there ever a time that you thought you'd had enough? You're like, this jealousy isn't worth it?
Oh, yeah. In the beginning. And there was times I thought we were going to break up and thought it would just be better to move on, but decided to stick with the hard emotions and see what happens. And luckily Bob is super great and talks about it. And I know he probably...
No,
No, you are. Probably thought that this was ridiculous. I don't have time for her crazy cries. And
No, not at all. I was like, this is probably more the norm. I mean, we're all human. We have emotions, and so if you're trying to get into swinging and you think that jealousy is not going to rear its head, or you think that there's not going to be some heavy emotions in there, then you're probably going down the wrong path. You should be prepared for the worst.
At the beginning, I think, Bob, you said you were definitely looking for it. Were you, Kat, or was it something that you hadn't really thought of and you did it as a, well, let's see, and ended up liking it? Or were you actually interested from the beginning?
more of, I wasn't interested in the beginning, not that I thought bad about it, I just never came up in my mind. So when he brought it up, I was just like, okay, well, whatever, you're going on your road trip in a month anyways. This hookup isn't going to last long. I'll just continue on what I've been doing. And then he ended up not going on that road trip and surprisingly living with me. And we've been living together ever since. So we're just working through those emotions and still keeping those open relationships, but still developing our new relationship was difficult for me to work through because I've never done it before. Or have thought about it before.
A lot of people just wouldn't even think that that's an option. I mean, your standard playbook is you meet somebody, you start hanging out, you go on a few dates, you start to have that awkward, there's always an awkward time, or I think there's almost always an awkward time where it's like, are we exclusive? Do we need to have the conversation? Is that a conversation that we have? Or do we just guess that we're there? And so one of our first big moments that I was talking about earlier with Lindsay is the three of us were out at a bar having a few drinks, and we had already hooked up at that point. And I remember just having a few drinks and then having that conversation of like, oh, by the way, this phenomenon happens where when you start to date somebody new, somebody from your past comes in and you end up hooking up with them. Isn't that weird? She's like, yeah, well, that's weird because that happened with me too. The same story.
Oh, yeah.
And so in the very beginning of our relationship, when we were not exclusive, but to the point where it's like, okay, we probably should start having that conversation, we had both hooked up with a different person from our past that came around to test us.
Mine
as
was
they say.
a long-term game with this guy I've been trying to hook up for like over a year. And then I was like, this is never going to happen, and let it go. And then it ended up happening as we started dating. I was like, no, cool.
And mine was with a girl who gives really good hugs, and we always gave that. When we hugged, I was always like, wow, were we like married in a past life? Were you my soulmate? Like, So there's another thing with ADHD that maybe if you do more research that you'll learn about, where it's like fixations are giving you dopamine. All of my like little hobbies are basically fixations. Bird watching, it's a fixation. Photography, all that shit. And you can fixate on people. And so you can find like a love, and you're getting that. It's like a funny meme where it's like, am I in love with this person, or am I just fixating on them for the dopamine?
And how do you tell the difference?
There might not be a difference.
Is love just fixation? And love's a crazy thing that I don't think anyone understands. It's this word that we use that describes 1,000 different things.
Yeah, as soon as you try to describe it too, you're probably missing the point.
I mean, other languages, they have multiple words for it, but even those don't cover the myriad of options of what that could potentially mean. Loving a cat versus loving your spouse versus, loving your unicorn. And, man, it's the answer to life, I guess, according to most people. Beatles say all you need is love, but once we figure that out, I think the world's going to be in a better place. It's just kind of hard to really pin it down.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
The first experience was someone that you'd already had a relationship with, and you were all three having drinks together, and it turned into...
No, nothing like that. That's not at all what happened.
We dream one day, but different situation. Go.
Yeah, we definitely have people too, where we're like someday. That's a long-term play, but someday maybe.
So you guys have like kind of like Trey and I will be like, all right, pick 5 people, 5 celebrities, and you got a hall pass for those. You guys got a top 10, top 5 list.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Of like celebrities or just
no,
people?
of like friends.
Just people. And so you guys have a list of friends.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to ask now.
Who's on the top of the list?
These are the only people that are going to listen to this.
Yeah. You know who you are.
You know.
So we were with this friend, and we were able to have this open conversation about like, hey, we hooked up with other people and it was okay. We don't need to like break up with each other. The way that she reacted and the way that I reacted was very like, oh, well, good. At least the way I remember it, it was like, good for you. Like,
you're shaking your head.
I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? Okay.
We're not exclusive, or like, it's good to kind of keep it open and maybe not have that jealousy side.
Okay.
As best as possible.
Sure.
That's the way I remember it. You can change the past just by
that's-
remembering it differently. Did you know that? That's a pro
fact.
tip.
Sure, checks out.
Checks out.
So what if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently from the beginning? Or was it the whole discovering of it was the exciting part?
I don't think I would change anything.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that I would change that wasn't like worth it, or like there's a lesson in everything, so even the bad parts, the jealousy parts of it, I wouldn't call those bad. I would just call those like a learning experience and necessary, because if jealousy comes up now, like you have more tools in your toolkit.
Yeah, it was easier for the jealousy to happen sooner because there's less of a timeline. So if we did break up, it's like, well, at least I didn't spend 3 years of my life and then realizing this wasn't going to work out. So trying to get that work through that sooner than later was nice.
So perhaps if you've been in a relationship for quite some time and then decide to transition or sample the lifestyle, it may be more difficult.
The stakes are higher. It's later in the night and you have more chips at that point, as opposed to you're in a tournament and you've barely played 5 or 6 hands. Not a big deal going all in, but if you're down to the last table and there's only 3 of you and it's 2 a.m., you've got most of the chips. Do you really want to push them all in?
So say there was people listening to this, because I'm sure there will be, that have thought about it. they think that it's something that they would like to do, what advice would you give them as far as speaking with their significant other, and what like early steps could potentially make it more likely successful?
I think communicating. I mean, you don't have to do like the details if you do hook up with someone. I mean, we talk about it just because we like to hear about
I
it.
like the details.
He likes the details, and same. But if you need to cut that part out, but just saying openly, I met this guy, we've been talking, how does that make you feel? And just kind of talk about your emotions. I know it sounds kind of corny, but just having like a deep conversation about it and expressing your emotions and feeling the emotions and working through them and seeing if it would work out, and kind of boundaries too. Just what boundaries at what point, like if you have any rules, like always wear a condom, or the couple we dated, they had a no kissing rule, so they didn't want their partners to be kissing us. So we respected that and followed those rules for them because that's what they wanted. So a lot of boundaries and what you want from it and what the other person wants from it.
Yeah, step one is the hardest step. Going from 0 to 1 is probably the hardest step, because that's once you've sort of talked about it, once you've had that conversation of like, hey, would you ever be interested in trying to have a threesome or experimenting? I feel like that could be very early in the conversation, is making low risk bets. You don't necessarily want to be, I mean, if it's the truth, then yeah, you should probably talk about it, but you don't necessarily want to get to a point where you have it in your head, oh, maybe we're going to be swingers, and you are texting some other person and you have this full relationship and conversation, and then you try to go back to your partner and be like, hey, there's this girl, I've been texting her, you know, like, do you want to have a threesome? Like, I've talked about it with this other girl and they're down. That's the wrong thing to do.
Talking about it with the third party before your primary.
Yeah. And so if you really want to do it right, I would say maybe just pitching the idea some night of like, would you ever be interested in having a threesome? Would you ever be interested in hooking up in the same room as another couple? These are very like soft openings of they could just say no. But at least at that point, they know that you've had that on your mind. And so you've already sort of opened that door. You've cracked the door a little bit. Other than that, I would say just like, even when we hooked up for the first time, we never fully planned it with this other person, the unicorn. We always left ourselves the out of, there's no pressure. We don't have to do anything. Maybe we hook up, maybe we don't. But if anybody gets uncomfortable, we can just play Parcheesi and have some drinks and talk about life.
Yeah, that seemed to be the overwhelming, I guess, majority of the swinger subreddit when I was reading through it. It's 100% all about consent and being very transparent. If you have a partner, you need to make sure that that partner is just that, your partner. You're not hiding anything from them. And the consistent thing I saw over and over and over again is trust was increased magnitudes after going through it. Whether it was a good or bad experience, going back to your partner after an experience like that, from what I was reading, was something that was, I don't know, it was almost transcendental in the way that they could then open up to their partner in a way that they hadn't in years past and truly express these emotions that were coming out. So whether it's for everyone or not, I wouldn't say it's much different than using hard drugs. Some people can handle them, some people cannot. Some people enjoy certain drugs differently than others, and I would definitely throw having, extra, I was going to say extramarital, but outside of your primary, let's just say monogamish, because that's a great way to put it. That kind of is an umbrella for everything.
Yeah,
that's got to be a drug. You remember the first time you touched pinkies with a girl back in junior high or whatever, and it's just electricity just coursing through your veins. But then you do it to the next you touch another pinky and it's not as electric, and you touch another pinky, it's not as electric. And
Yeah.
so it seems like it's a way to kind of get back that excitement.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it is sometimes like a mind-altering experience, whatever sort of chemicals are going on in your brain when you're swinging with another couple. Is sometimes I have to pinch myself and be like, is this really happening right now? Did I really set my life up that this is like okay?
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't be dating the person.
Yeah,
You would hate it.
probably.
So do you guys see yourselves ever going back to taking the ish off the monogamous?
Yeah, I don't really see like a reason to.
No.
I don't think so. I would say I can't picture us doing that, but I wouldn't be. I would probably be fully against it at this point, but no one can predict the future. So,
I don't want that.
yeah, we don't really want that.
So what are the big turnoffs? Have you ever had people approach you knowing that you're swingers and you're just completely turned off by how they approached it?
What's that look for?
Kat gets into conversations sometimes with people about us being swingers, and then she has to be like, nope, I said too much. Abort.
Like I said, I'm open if people ask me questions. And so when I'm like grabbing a drink with a friend, it comes up and then they start asking. And then I don't know. And then it's usually with older guys for some reason this is happening.
It's always an older guy.
It's always older guys. So then they start talking more, and then they get a little bit more flirty, and then it's just like, pump the brakes a little. This wasn't an opening for you to hit on me or for us to hook up. It was more like, I like you, or we're becoming friends, and you were asking, so this is part of my life, but doesn't mean that I want this to happen, if that makes sense.
It turns from just a conversation to now you're a target, or maybe they were thinking you were offering something up that you weren't.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of actually dealing with that right now with a guy on our soccer team. Now I'm in an awkward spot of like, well, how do I handle this?
Oh no. So I guess there is some downsides to being open and honest with people if they don't know how to handle their own emotions or.
Yeah, ultimately it's our responsibility
Yeah.
too to be like, hey, we only swing with certain people, and you're not one of them.
Do you guys have a type?
I wouldn't say that we have a type. I would say that I maybe have an anti-type. For instance, the couple that we met on Reddit with the no kissing rule, that one didn't really work for me.
That was hard for Bob.
That one was hard for me. Because I'm not really into, again, the Guy Fieri Florida man with the just like, let's have a few drinks, switch wives, and
Pound it out.
pound it out and call it a day. I'm more into the sensual experience. And so you asked earlier about same room, separate room. I would say I'm down for either, but I find myself more comfortable and more open in the separate room situation and just being able to experience that other person one-on-one, as opposed to being like, is her husband looking at me over there? Is Kat looking at me? Am I going to do something weird? Am I drooling? Like, what's going on? What's it look like from their point of view? I think that I've enjoyed separate room has solved a lot of logistics.
Okay. And are you both heterosexual, or do you guys have a bisexual tendency?
I have a bisexual tendency. I like guys more than girls, but I'll hook up with girls.
Yeah, I tried it. I would say that I'm straight. I tried the bisexual thing, and I just wasn't really into it. I would say that I'm extremely open-minded, but that's normally in the beginning you'll maybe be asking like, hey, what are you into? What are you not into? And so for me, again, because of the sights, sounds, and smells thing, I'm like, I'm not really into anal, and I don't think that I'm really into guy-on-guy action.
Scruffy cheeks don't do it for me. That's one thing that I've found out over the years.
Yeah.
Giving a good hug's nice, but anything past that, I don't know. I'm so used to that smooth face.
Yeah. And just like the soft, I don't know. I just really love soft feminineness, and so didn't work for me. But
At least you tried.
Yeah.
Kudos
Now
to
you
being
know.
open-minded.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think that there's a happiness that comes with giving it a try, and then that way you know. And it's not to say that in the future it might be like a different guy that is not. That's just a different guy, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm like really into this guy. Okay.
I mean, if Ryan Reynolds rolls around, I'll be gay. Sure.
Definitely doing Ryan Reynolds, or he's doing me. He's probably doing me. I'm thinking.
And I don't even care if he's all scarred up Deadpool style. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
I'd actually prefer it.
All right, Ryan Reynolds.
I feel like you do girl on girl with Blake Lively.
Sure.
Yeah. I think they'd be down with that.
I think so too.
They
Can we
seem like
just
nice
swing with
people.
them?
Should we contact them?
Yeah, we'll reach out. Hey, Ryan, when you hear this, reach out to me on my website. I'll be able to get y'all in contact.
Perfect.
Well, is there any other gems of wisdom or insight or fun that you guys have had that you want to share? Are you proponents of everyone swinging? Do you think it's just a to each their own?
To each your own.
I think it's to each their own. I will say in our friend group, we have a lot of really open-minded friends. In our current friend group, there's nobody that I can think of in our friend group that's just like, that's disgusting, you shouldn't do that, and you're going to hell. I would say that our friend group is pretty open-minded. And then our Hawaii friend group is like pretty... We haven't swung with really that many people in it, but I would say that everyone, like we've talked about it, everyone's talked about it, and we could be at somebody's wedding and I feel like at any point an orgy could break out.
Have you guys had orgies?
No.
No. Damn.
No. As much as Bob talks about it. No.
Yeah, there's more talk than there is actually happening. I don't know how I would do in an orgy. I think it'd be super fun.
I mean, we always try to get it to happen when we go hang out, and we've talked to some friends about actually logistically making it happen, but it's so hard to get everyone on board on something like that.
Even like a six sum or something like that.
When does it go from a sum to an orgy?
I have no idea. 6?
I think we
5?
decided 5, which could technically be a 5-some, but I think we decided 5 could potentially be an orgy.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. 5 is an orgy.
4 is not. I would say 4 is not really an orgy.
I'd say foursome would.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common term.
Unless
Once you
it's
get above that.
Unless maybe it's all guys, all girls, all LGBTQIA plus.
What?
Is that the is that the acronym now?
Yeah.
IA?
Well,
What's IA?
Well, I don't think that we should be here saying like
What's IA?
intersex and
Asexual?
Asexual? Oh,
yeah.
okay. I
Well,
just
look
thought
at
that
us.
was all under queer and plus.
And there is a plus, yeah, for sure.
Plus is just kind of like, all right, everything else in between, but they're adding on more acronyms.
Yeah.
We just need to shorten it all down and just understand it's all about everyone loving and accepting each other regardless.
Yeah, that might be good. Yeah, I don't know. I call girls boys a lot, and just for fun, or not for fun, but just like, because I don't really see people necessarily as men and women, and
He called this little girl at our indoor soccer place, like a buddy. I go, hey, buddy. And she goes, I'm not a buddy, I'm a girl. Just walks away.
yeah.
It
But I was
pretty
like, but
funny.
you can be a buddy. I don't know.
It was funny. She was cute.
Yeah, she was cute.
She has some attitude.
I don't think we should go down this road.
Sorry.
This is a
It was just
slippery
funny.
slope, and there's gonna be a lot of foot and mouth.
Let's keep kids out of this one right now. Well,
No, I'm thinking pronouns. Let's
No.
with that, yeah.
keep pronouns.
No, I swear, every time I go online, someone has to say something about transgenderism, and I'm like, I'll go back to, we just need to love each other regardless of what our interests are. We need to respect each other, and period. I mean, regardless of who we think we are, we need to respect other people and who they think they are. And
Or we don't. What if everything was just perfect the way that it is, and we actually, in order for the universe to exist, needed bad people, mean people, people who don't use pronouns correctly, hateful people? What if that's actually necessary to keep everything from just exploding into the ether?
Well, we're doing a pretty good job as humans right now because we got it all.
Yeah, I like to think of this concept of like zero, like everything sums back to zero and cancels itself out. So you can think that the world is full of like hateful people and like really shitty, like nasty, bad things. But for all of those things, I think that there's an exactly equal on the other side of the spectrum side of good things, and that everything is perfectly balanced. For every good, there's a bad. For every really bad, there's a really good. For every like somewhat white lie, there's like a little bit of a mild truth.
Well, if it's supposed to be and that's what's keeping it balanced, can we call it bad?
Yeah, I think we can call it bad, but bad isn't necessarily bad. We're just using it as a name. We're just using it as a working name. Bad and good.
Well, guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed picking y'all's brains on all of these topics because I'd been kind of wanting to for a while, but I'm just like, nah, let's just keep it for the podcast. Let's keep it for the podcast. But it's super interesting to me because it definitely clearly shows a different way of life from what I think lots of people experience, and it shows the positive of it. It shows that just because it has been this way for so many generations, it doesn't have to be, and we can explore other new exciting things, because what's life if not experience and trying to have it all while we're here on this short little blip that we have called the life. So thank you guys for being so open about it, because that's, I think, a huge step towards removing stigma and helping people potentially find a lifestyle that would make them incredibly happy.
Yeah, I think that for the amount of time that I've spent on Reddit, I almost feel like it could be a majority of people that are at least interested in being monogamish.
You might be right. There's no way to tell, but I guess to start asking around. Let's go to bars and start seeing.
maybe a survey or something.
Yeah, it is anonymous.
Yeah,
but then you never know who's a bot, and maybe there's a lot of swingers in Russia. And
do we have time to get into AI?
I would love to get.
No, I'm just kidding. We already did the outro. Sorry, Adrian.
But you do have some awesome AI artwork that's currently hanging up on the wall. I've seen quite a few. I love your what is it, the goggle series that you had?
Steampunk Willie.
Steampunk, and you got Steampunk Willie Nelson up
and the
on the wall.
Bonobo. I tried to do a NFT for the Bonobo sanctuary, and there's a Bonobo sanctuary in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It hasn't taken off yet.
Well, after this episode, it will. We're all set.
Perfect.
Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to keep this conversation going off the mic.
For sure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and hope everybody has a good day. And just remember to love your other a little bit more tonight. Give them a hug, and if you feel like you need to have that conversation,
Good luck.
go ahead and have it.
Bye, guys.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.
You guys have fun?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love how
We started. Can we do
a whole entire episode.
I am Woodstock.